let's get into Twitter files.
Boy.
Let's freaking do it. There's a lot here. It's not just Taibbi. There's also Barry Weiss, who I'm not a fan of, but I didn't want to put her picture. I could have put Elon there too and gotten some more clickbait. But this was the legendary drop on December 2nd. It's going to be history. I mean, really. Matt,
what do you mean?
Look,
I heard it was a big nothing burger.
Well, it's a nothing burger that's gotten 378,000 likes on the platform and over 130,000 retweets. And this was cropped the other day, and I'm sure there's even more now. But I found a thread reader so that we don't have to read it clogged with all the different to see exactly how much action and whatever. I'm gonna give some notes and some flair on this, but I just want to kind of get through it and explain what this is. So I work a corporate job in my real life, so I have some visibility into some of this stuff, into what these Slack conversations are, and I have a little bit of context that I might be able to provide, and I want to just show what Matt's talking about and give my perspective. If you watch Primo Radical, I love what Primo Radical, his take on this has been so good as well. And I think that you're going to find that it's pretty similar to what both Matt.
What you're about to read is the first installment in a series based upon.
Oh my God, that was great.
Thousands of internal documents obtained by sources at Twitter.
Primo Robot. That was brilliant, by the way. That was absolute brilliance. So, Twitter Files tells an incredible story from inside of one of the largest and most influential social media platforms. It's a Frankenstein tale of a human being mechanism grown out of the control of its designer. Pretty cool, right? And then it skips a bunch of stuff, and I'm only going to go to the most important ones. I'm not reading through this whole thing because it'd take forever. But the key is that both parties had access to these tools to censor and to request blocks and to request reviews. For instance, in 2020, requests from both Trump White House and Biden campaign were received and honored. Very important here. Campaign requests from White House were honored. This was not a complete one-sided thing. Now, it definitely was slanted. However, it was not complete. And he's saying here the system wasn't balanced. It was based on contacts. And because Twitter was and is overwhelmingly set by shit libs, I'll say it. All right. And how much? Well, here's just how much. 96 to 99% of the individual contributions in 2018, 2020, and 2022 from the employees of Twitter went to Democrats. So we're not even talking like just a little bit of bias here. We're talking blind hatred, and you could kind of see from their tweets publicly and from their internal discussions, they were no fan of Trump administration, people who worked at Twitter. So, Twitter Files Part 1, How and Why Twitter Blocked the Hunter Biden Laptop Story is really the key of the first drop.
Well, obviously, it's because it's Russian maldisinformation.
So what happened? I think we all know, but on October 14, 2020, New York Post published the Biden secret emails, an expose based on the contents of Hunter Biden's abandoned laptop. And what happened next? Haley McEnany, Twitter took extraordinary steps to suppress the story, removing links, posted warnings that it may be unsafe. They even blocked its transmission via DMs, a tool hitherto reserved for extreme cases, e.g. child pornography. White House spokesman Kayleigh McEnany was locked out of her account for tweeting about the story, prompting a furious letter from Trump campaign staffer Mike Hahn, who said at least pretend to care for the next 20 days because they were literally 20 days out from the election. And here's the email.
Mike seems like one of those names that Bart would get, like the bartender to say.
No, that's Mike Hunt. You know? That's Hunt. His last name is Hunt.
Oh.
Mike. First name Michael. Last name Hunt. Goes by Mike.
That's Mike Hahn.
Yes,
Mike Hahn.
Yes. All right. And what's really amazing is you're literally seeing like the email addresses that this is the raw stuff. They don't normally look. Twitter, government, and politics. And again, you're getting a guy who worked directly with the Trump campaign. So what it says here is all she did was cite the story and firsthand reporting that's been reported by other outlets and not disputed by the Biden campaign. I need an answer immediately on how she'll be
Okay.
unlocked, right? And not wrong. These guys are now playing who gets to say and decide what. This is another key thing. Everybody is saying that the FBI somehow was involved, but according to evidence that Matt's seen, there is no evidence of any government involvement in the Hunter Biden laptop story and censoring it.
You say that, but I have a clip of Joe Rogan talking to another social media giant in Zuckerberg.
Yes.
That the FBI did come to him and ask him not to put that out because they said it was Russian information.
Yes.
So, I mean, we also get to talk about, like...
Vijaya, watch your mouth. This is a family show.
Well, yeah, exactly, because now we're...
Just
because Vijaya...
Just go ahead, say it.
Pussy.
No, Vijaya. Vijaya Gotti was the legal policy and trust, all right? And this was made without the knowledge of CEO Jack Dorsey censoring the Hunter Biden laptop. All right?
But how does he not know?
Because he was running...
I know Vanessa did a whole thing on him.
I'll tell you how. Well, first of all, he also was running Square/Block at the time. You know, that's another Fortune 500 company. He's a dual CEO.
Yes, dual CEO.
Right.
Which means he's dual evil.
Well, no, yes, but what it means is that he's relying on the other C-level executives to really run the company because he's a public face. He's more an evangelist than the day-to-day operations control of the company. He's a chairman/CEO. It's a title. But you can see the confusion in the following lengthy exchange, which ends up including Gotti and former Trust and Safety Chief Yoel Roth. We know a lot more about Yoel Roth now, and it's not great. Comms official Trenton Kennedy writes, I'm struggling to understand the policy basis for marking this as unsafe. Yep. So now they're starting to have into
Romero.
They're starting to panic a little bit, Roth. Right? And then even in one humorous exchange on day one, Ro Khanna, we know Ro Khanna, he reaches out to Gotti, and why? Because Ro Khanna is Silicon Valley's congressman. So he's basically calling on behalf of... Thanks. He's calling on behalf of Congress and on behalf of himself because he's the only one who's even remotely plugged into this that has any idea. But I guarantee that someone with the campaign got on the phone and said, this is your district. Find out what the hell's going on here. So Ro reaches out to Gotti to gently suggest she hop on the phone to talk about the backlash re-speech. Khanna was the only Democratic official I could find in the files who expressed concern at all. And he did it, by the way, from his own personal Gmail account. See that? Anyway, Khanna tries to reroute the conversation to the First Amendment, mention of which is generally hard to find in the files. Guys, by the way, I'm not doxing him. This is public. This is published already on Twitter. I'm just grabbing this right off Twitter. And that's the thing. And we're going to talk, and Matt talks about why he published it on Twitter. That was part of the conditions of doing this. So
he's talking to
Vijaya.
Yeah, Vijaya is the chief legal counsel. So he offers just wanted to offer my 2 cents. Please keep this communication just between us and Jack. No need to CC the team or forward them. You mean he's got one way of legislating when it comes to the C level and one way of talking when it comes to everybody else?
Like a private policy and public one.
Wow. Yeah, that's what I heard. That's what I saw. Yeah, a little bit. Then we skip down and we get to Net Choice. Net Choice is like a nanny thing that they hired to monitor speech and stuff. So Net Choice lets Twitter know that a bloodbath awaits in upcoming Hill hearings. They're also gathering sentiment because they're measuring what's happening with different Congress people. Members saying it's a tipping point, complaining tech has grown so big that they can't even regulate themselves, so government may need to intervene. So every Republican said it's a tipping point. Both Democrats and Republicans were angry. Of course they were. This is over the Hunter Biden leaks. Right? Yep. The censoring of the Hunter Biden story, which some people say could have or did swing the election. I have questions. 20 days out, I don't know. I don't think that Hunter has anything, affects it, whatever. But that it's totally open to interpretation, and we're going to get to all that. Sabo reports to Twitter that some Hill figures are characterizing the laptop story as text access Hollywood moment, right? So we got one more from the Twitter files continued. First Amendment isn't absolute. This is the last entry that he had on the thread for the night. And then he had some supplemental stuff to add, which I'll have. But he said the Democrats complain that companies are inept, right? So this is coming from inside Twitter. Democrats were in agreement.
Inside the House.
Right? Inside the House. Social media needs to moderate more because they're corrupting democracy and making all truth relative. When pushed on how the government might insist on that, consistent with the First Amendment, they demurred, the First Amendment isn't absolute. Wait, what? Yeah.
It's like what Musk said. Freedom of speech isn't freedom of reach.
An amazing subplot.
What?
Right. That was good. Was how much this was done without the knowledge of Jack Dorsey and how long it took for the situation to get unfucked, as one employee put it even after he jumped in. While reviewing Gaddy's emails, I saw a familiar name, my own Matt Taibbi did, because Dorsey sent her a copy of his Substack article blasting the incident. A little bit of an ego stroke to Matt, but he earned it. So that was on the 2nd, I believe, of December. He drops that at night, and it's thread journalism. He's dropping it one tweet at a time, and everybody's kind of hanging like, what is this? Like, what's going on here? And then we're like, huh? So 4 days later, we get this in the middle of the afternoon.
Captain's log.
Captain's log. Supplemental. Yes. So this was Tuesday. That on Friday, the first installment was published here. We expected to publish more over the weekend. Many wonder why there's a delay. We can tell you why. Because this guy named Jim Baker was fired on Tuesday. Among the reasons, vetting the first batch of Twitter files without the knowledge of new management. Wait, what? Yeah. Barry Weiss.
In other news, Jim Candlestick Maker.
My jaw hit the floor.
Been promoted.
Well, Fox has been allowed to investigate Henhouse effectively, is what you're talking about here. So what happened? Baker's a controversial figure. He's been something of a zealot of FBI controversies dating back to 2016, from the Steele dossier to the Alpha server mess. He resigned in 2018 after an investigation into leaks into the press. The news that Baker was reviewing the Twitter files surprised everyone involved, to say the least. New Twitter chief Elon Musk acted quickly to exit Baker on Tuesday. And then they had to go through, did he delete anything? What did he do? What does he know? What did he copy to the... Now, he worked for the FBI for years and years and years, apparently. So that was a whole other mess that came out. So that was on Tuesday. Then Friday night, Barry Weiss starts dropping her stuff. And we knew that she was going to be doing that soon. And this one's pretty interesting because of these secret blacklists. And this is where they started to yell nothing burger. And I agree and disagree. And here's the thing, that a new Twitter files investigation reveals that teams of Twitter employees build blacklists, prevent disfavored tweets from trending, and actively limit the visibility of entire accounts or even trending topics, all in secret without informing users. That is news, whether you like it or not. We suspected. We have never had hard evidence. We've never seen the Slack messages back and forth that prove it.
Right.
Twitter once had a mission to give everyone the power to create and share ideas and information instantly without barriers. Along the way, barriers nevertheless were erected. Take, for example, Stanford's Dr. Jay Bhattacharya. We're familiar with him if you're a Jimmy Dore fan, if you know about the Great Barrington Declaration. Okay, he's argued that COVID lockdowns would harm children. He's also said, and the Great Barrington Declaration has been stringent in declaring that the most vulnerable in the society should absolutely be vaccinated, but we should not try to mass vaccinate everyone as a solution, because You cannot vaccinate your way out of this problem. But the COVID vaccine is safe and effective, according to YouTube. So, Dr. Jay Bhattacharya argued that COVID lockdowns would harm children. Twitter secretly placed him on a trends blacklist, which prevented his tweets from trending. And there is the screenshot showing trends blacklist. Pretty interesting. Twitter denied that it does such things, of course. In 2018, Twitter's Vijaya Gandhi. Then she was head of legal policy and trust, which Yoel Roth then took over. And Kayvon Beckpour said, we do not shadow ban. And then they added, we certainly don't shadow ban based on political viewpoints or ideology. Indignant. What many people call shadow banning, Twitter executives and employees call visibility filtering, or VF. Multiple high-level sources confirmed its meaning. Think about VF as being a way for us to suppress what people see to different levels. Straight up the word suppress. It's a very powerful tool. Reef, you got something to say there?
On what?
Suppressing hate. Think about visibility filtering as being a way for us to suppress what people see at different levels.
Yes.
It's a very, very powerful tool.
Yeah.
Right, but the mechanisms that they say didn't exist.
Yes.
But this is the mechanisms they say didn't exist. And now you're seeing the specific controls and the screenshots and everything that's actually allowing that to happen. All right, so.
But I mean, come on, man. This is obviously Russian propaganda. Obviously. I don't know how you don't. Obviously. You know what I mean?
Obvious. Well,
like,
isn't VF a Russian terminology? Sure. I'm kidding. VF refers to Twitter's control over user visibility. It used VF to block searches of individual users, to limit the scope of particular tweets for discoverability, to block certain users, select users' posts from ever appearing on the trending page, and from inclusion in all hashtag searches, all without users' knowledge. Shadow banning. But that's not shadow banning. We control visibility quite a bit, and we control the amplification of your content quite a bit. And normal people do not know how much we do, one Twitter engineer told us. 2 additional Twitter employees confirmed it. The group that decided...
Just read that again for people one more time.
Quote, we control visibility quite a bit, and we control the amplification of your content quite a bit, and normal people do not know how much we do.
That's the big part. That's the big part. They're essentially saying, like, normal people are dumb. They don't know.
How can they? They have no visibility into this. Yes, that's what I'm saying. The group that decided whether to limit the reach of certain users was the SRT GET, the Strategic Response Team Global Escalation.
The CERT-GET.
Yeah. It often handled up to 200 cases a day. And what's a case? But there existed a level beyond official ticketing, beyond the rank and file moderators, following the company's policy on paper, and that's the SIPPES, Site Integrity Policy Escalation Support. And who is this? This is a secret group which included head of legal policy and trust, head of global safety and global head of trust and safety, and the CEO and a couple of others. High level. Nobody even knew about it. This is where
all of these were like ex-FBI for the most part, right?
I don't think that these people were necessarily. These are like C-level, and I'm sure there were people who were involved in
a few of them that were
data security.
14 more ex-FBI and security service Twitter employees today were like,
yes,
and they were all at high level.
This is where the number 15. This is where the biggest, most politically sensitive decisions got made. Think high follower count, controversial. There would be no ticket or anything. So there's no record of this stuff. But it turns out there actually is. But
Pez seems like
it's just
like a product name,
right? One of the accounts that rose to this level of security, of course, was
for beverages.
Libs of TikTok, an account that was on the trends blacklist and was designated as "Do Not Take Action on User Without Consulting with SIPPES." This is, by the way,
what do they mean by action?
Meaning, don't block them, don't ban their account, don't shadow ban their stuff. Don't do anything without consulting the highest levels of of executive management because they're watching this
I thought libs
personally.
of TikTok was
They're right wingers. They're making fun of the libs of
right.
TikTok.
So what?
It's
I guess why would they?
who works at
Why would they
Twitter?
have them not take action?
Who works at Twitter? They have to be careful because it's a high-profile right-wing
Sure.
account, like James Woods, for example, which they end up banning later on, and we're going to talk about James Woods. But libs of TikTok was on the trends blacklist, meaning that their stuff was not allowed to go viral or to trend, on top of
Anywhere.
other things. Right.
So does that
But-
mean they also have actions that would boost that they're
Yes.
talking to?
Of course they could.
Who are they?
But-
Who are they sending that to? That info?
Mm-hmm. Good question.
Like any actual user? Like what actions does that user have?
Well, normally it's paid.
You know?
They have to pay Twitter ads. That's how they boost it. But you think
Sure.
Twitter can't give that a little boost if they want to automatically? Like,
right.
when there's a worldwide disaster or they want to push a hashtag, you guarantee they can do that.
Yeah.
And artificially.
Okay.
Vosh trends every day in your newsfeed. Need I say more?
Yep.
Okay. Twitter repeatedly informed the owner of Libs of TikTok account that she'd been suspended for violating Twitter's policy against hateful conduct. However, internal CPES memo from October 2022, after her 7th suspension, committee acknowledged that she's not directly engaged in behavior violative of the hateful conduct policy. Okay. They have continued targeting individuals of the LGBTQ for alleged misconduct. Okay, but that is not violative of their policy. According to this. Committee justified her suspensions internally by claiming that her posts encouraged online harassment of hospitals and medical providers by insinuating that gender-affirming healthcare is equivalent to child abuse or grooming. But compare this to what happened when she herself was doxxed on November 21st. A photo of her home with her address was posted in a tweet that's garnered more than 10,000 likes. Ready for this? The tweet's still up. Right now. When she told Twitter that her address had been disseminated, she says Twitter support responded with this message. We reviewed the reported content and didn't find it to be in violation of the Twitter rules. No action was taken. Doxing tweet still up. Not a fan of libs of TikTok myself, but that's ridiculous. I mean, come on. People have put up pictures of Misty's house and not even put the address, and it's still, you got to get that shit taken down. That's hypothesis underlying much of what we've implemented, according to Yoel Roth, is that if exposure to misinformation directly causes harm, then we should use remediations that reduce exposure, and limiting the spread and virality of content is a good way to do that. And then he adds that they got Jack on board with implementing this for civic integrity in the near term, but they're going to need to make a more robust case to get this into our repertoire of policy remediations, especially for other policy domains. He's setting up now what's going to be happening. And he sees the writing on the wall and he's like, how are we going to start further banning and further implementing policy and showing that it is official and getting Jack to be on board with it? So this is right before, of course, the company sold, and pretty interesting. October 2022, we knew that Elon's taking over. I would guess that this policy, whatever they're doing, they're trying to button it up before he takes over, not realizing that he's basically going to flip the entire thing over and fire half the people and do everything that he did. So Barry also wants to say that the authors have broad and expanding access to Twitter's files. The only condition we agreed to was that the material would first be published on Twitter. This is really important. Everybody's saying that this is handpicked, that they were only given certain files and certain emails and certain everything. No, they were given everything. Here, go through it. Where do you start? I mean, you and I start in different places, but this is where they started.
Yeah.
Right. We're just getting started on our reporting. Documents cannot tell the whole story here. A big thank you to everyone who's spoken to us so far. If you're a current or former Twitter employee, we'd love to hear from you. Please write to, this is at the Free Press. Now, again, not a big fan of Bari Weiss. She's terrible on Israel policy. Don't like that she worked for the New York
Yes.
Times. She's
Assange-
mainstream media shit
Assad
lib.
toady.
Terrible. But watch Taibbi for the next
Yeah.
installment. And I did cover Matt Taibbi's next installment. And I think that
He was on
is
Rogan recently too.
fascinating. Oh, really? Okay. So this is where it really
Yeah,
starts
that's
to
gonna be a
get
thing.
interesting. The removal of Donald Trump from Twitter. And this is the lead up to January 6th. I have a lot more of the tweets here because this really tells a story. Matt's a really good storyteller. By the way, if you have not already, tknews.substack.com, I think it might also be taibbi.substack.com, is Matt's Substack. It's $5 a month. It's $50 a year. I became a paid supporter because, first of all, you get his breakdown and his analysis of what his take is on all of this, which I thought was pretty interesting, and actually aligned pretty closely with where I was. And I was asking tough questions the minute this stuff came out. And I'll put up the tweet. I didn't grab the tweet from INN that I posted, which was basically that was this happening before the election? And turns out, as this went further, yes, it was. World knows much of the story of what happened between riots at the Capitol on January 6th and the removal of Donald Trump from Twitter on January 8th. We're going to show you what hasn't been revealed, which is the erosion of standards within the company in the months before January 6th, decisions by high-ranking executives to violate their own policies and more against the backdrop of ongoing documented interaction with federal agencies, which also is new news. So we had some interesting stuff happening here. Okay. First installment covers, of course, the period through the election, before the election through January 6th. That's what we're going to cover tomorrow, and we're going to do this next week because there was just so much to go through. Oh, my God. Michael Schellenberger will detail the chaos inside Twitter on January 7th, and then on Sunday today, Barry Weiss just published the secret internal communications from the key date of January 8th when they decided to ban him. Whatever your opinion on the decision to remove Trump that day, the internal communications at Twitter between January 6th and 8th have clear historical import. Even Twitter's employees understood in the moment that it was a landmark moment in the annals of speech. Yes. I did it
You
for
did
you.
it on
Reef.
me.
Yep. I think that's in the wrong place, but that's a pretty interesting. Is this the first sitting head of state to ever be suspended? As soon as they finished banning Trump, Twitter execs started processing new power. They prepared to ban future presidents and White Houses, perhaps even Joe Biden. The new administration will not be suspended by Twitter unless absolutely necessary. They're already setting it up. Twitter executives removed Trump in part over what one executive called the context surrounding actions by Trump and supporters over the course of the election and, frankly, the last 4+ years. In the end, they looked at a broad picture, but that approach can cut both ways. Bulk of the internal debate leading to Trump's ban took place in those 3 January days. However, the intellectual framework was laid in the months preceding the Capitol riots. And this is where Yoel Roth comes into play. Before January 6th, Twitter was a unique mix of automated, rules-based enforcement and more subjective moderation by senior execs. As reported, the firm had a vast array of tools for manipulating visibility, most of which were thrown at Trump and others pre-January 6th. As the election approached, senior executives, perhaps under pressure from federal agencies with whom they met more as time progressed, increasingly struggled with rules and began to speak of VOs and pretext to what they'd likely have done anyway. Very important opinions. I don't remember what the VOs are. Violations. Okay. After January 6th, internal Slacks showed Twitter executives getting a kick out of intensified relationships with federal agencies. Here's Yoel Roth lamenting a lack of generic enough calendar descriptions. He's humble bragging here. You know,
He looks like one of those guys we have on Who Are These People? That's what the
definitely
picture
not
looks like.
meeting with the FBI. I swear.
Just
Yeah.
AI generated.
Okay. One particular Slack channel. This really piqued my interest, offers a unique window into the evolving thinking of top officials in late 2020 and early 2021. On October 8th, 2020, executives opened a channel called US 2020 XFN Enforcement. Through January 6th, this would be home for discussions about election-related removals, especially ones that involve high-profile accounts, often called VITs or very important tweeters. There was at least some tension between safety operations, which is a larger department whose staffers used a more rules-based process for addressing issues like porn, scams, and threats, and a smaller, more powerful cadre of senior policy execs like Roth and Gaddy. They're the little fiefdom. The latter group were a high-speed Supreme Court of moderation, issuing content rulings on the fly, often in minutes and based on guesses, gut calls, even Google searches, even in cases involving the president. So there's this specific tweet where Trump tweets out 50,000 Ohio voters getting wrong absentee ballots, out of control, a rigged election. They say a rigged election would be enough to be in violation, right? But as it turns out, if the claim were in fact inaccurate, yes. However, turns out it was true. And he found it where? On Reddit. Through NPR. Turns out that one's true. During this time, executives were also clearly liaising with federal enforcement and intel agencies about moderation of election-related content. What? Well, we're still at the start of reviewing the Twitter files. We're finding out more about these interactions every day. This post about the Hunter Biden laptop situation shows that Roth not only met weekly with the FBI and Homeland Security, but also with the Office of the Director of National Intelligence. So, here's what's new for you since our last check-in. Hacked materials exploded. We blocked the New York Post story, then we unblocked it, then we said we unblocked it, and now we're in a messy situation where our policy's in shambles, comms is angry, reporters think we're idiots, and we're refactoring an exceedingly complex policy 18 days out from an election. In short, fuck my life. Weekly sync with FBI, DHS, DNI, re-election security. The meeting happened about 15 minutes after the aforementioned hacked materials implosion. The government declined to share anything useful when asked. Monthly meeting with FBI, FITF. That's a business acronym. They'll explain. Briefed on several ongoing investigations. His report to the FBI DHS is almost farcical in its self-flagellating tone. We blocked the NY. Yeah, right. So exactly. Comms is angry. Reporters think we're idiots. In short, fuck my life. Some of his later slacks indicate his weekly confabs with federal law enforcement involved separate meetings. Here, he goes to the FBI and DHS respectively to go to an Aspen Institute thing, then take a call with Apple. And I didn't show the screenshot, but he's showing that he's got these meetings on his calendar all the time, to the point where he can't even make them all. Examining the entire election enforcement Slack, we didn't see one reference to moderation requests from the Trump campaign, the Trump White House, or Republicans generally. We looked. They may exist. We were told they do. However, they were absent here. Is this what that dude was doing? Or was this happening in another channel entirely from another committee and another group of people privately that did not have access to this? I'm not sure. But this is also a pretty interesting revelation. That inside that channel, they were only talking about the Hunter Biden laptop and Democrats, and never about anything from the Trump campaign. Here's one case that's pretty interesting. Mike Huckabee. We know this guy. He joke tweets about mailing in ballots for his deceased grandparents and grandparents. They vote just like me. Dumbass. So they're like, what do we do? This inspires a long Slack that reads like a parody. I agree it's a joke, but he's literally admitting a tweet, in a tweet, a crime. Group declares Huck's an edge case, and though one notes, we don't make exceptions for jokes or satire, they ultimately decided to leave him be because we've poked enough bears. Totally subjective.
Yep.
Okay, somebody else said this could still mislead people, The human reverse group declares before moving on. In the docs, they often expand criteria to subjective issues like intent. Yes, a video is authentic, but why was it shown? Orientation. Was a banned tweet shown to condemn or support? Or reception. Did a joke cause confusion? This reflex will become key on January 6th. In another example, Twitter employees prepare to slap mail-in voting is safe warning label on a Trump tweet about a postal screw-up in Ohio before realizing the events took place, which meant that the tweet was factually accurate. And that's the one about the ballots. Nearly 50,000 voters received wrong ballots in Ohio. Do you feel safe mailing in your ballot? That's literally from ABC. No, a rigged. He just knows how to troll everybody. He really does. And just wow. So inside, what are they saying? Okay. They say to not sure how the process is, forget. Are we expected to do the policy comms write up? Right. And I've been on paid time off, so I'm not 100% up to speed. My understanding is in both cases, the events took place, and the commentary by POTUS is his opinion related to these events, so there wouldn't be any labeling action violation on our side. Yeah, these are factually accurate. Thanks for clarifying. So they can't do anything. They're trying every day. They're looking at every tweet that he's making, and they're going, can we block this one, boss? Can we do this one, boss? How about this one, boss? Oh, look at we got it. Wow. Okay. Again, I'm not a Trump fan. I didn't vote for Trump. I'm not a Trump fan. But you can't do this. You can't do this to the president of the United States on every single tweet. You can't do this. They've never done this before in history. Very well done on speed. Trump was being visibility filtered as late as a week before the election. Here, senior execs didn't appear to have a particular violation, but still worked fast to make sure a fairly anodyne tweet couldn't be replied to, shared, or liked. This was factual. What's the team's recommendation? They had a whole doc to discuss it. Thank you. Agree. Flagging right now with the leadership given that it's POTUS. We'll set up a call. Can we use a new doc per PII review? Okay. And then here's a new doc. And then it's EDI approved. Right? So a seemingly innocuous follow-up involved a tweet from an actor. We all know James Woods. He's total right-wing douchebag on Twitter, or used to be on Twitter, till they booted him off. Right? Why? Because he shared this tweet, which he's claiming Twitter is suppressing this tweet by the president. Here's a screen grab. They can't share this. You can't really see what this is. They're trying to immediately call him out for being a liar, or at least provide some kind of additional context to his tweet that they don't do to anybody else. This is unequal treatment. Right? They're saying that James Woods' ubiquitous presence in argued over Twitter datasets is already a Twitter files in-joke. I guess among the researchers, because he's so effective at poking the bear and he's there so often and he pisses off Twitter executives so often. That would be my guess. After Woods angrily quote tweeted Trump's warning label, Twitter staff, in a preview of what ended up happening after January 6th, despaired of a reason for action, but resolved to hit him hard on future VIO. That is a really key phrase, that hit him hard on future VIO. Considering, he says, with firmer basis. Meanwhile, I love saying that, there are multiple instances of involving pro-Biden tweets warning that Trump may try to steal the election that got surfaced only to be approved by senior executives. This one, they decide, just expresses concern that mailed ballots might not make it on time. I mean, they're going to try to steal the election. These are blue checks. If you haven't voted yet, don't mail. Drop it off or vote early. If you can't vote, vote them out. Right? So it's encouraging people to vote. So therefore, even though they're saying they're going to try to steal it, That's okay. All right. This is an edge case with commentary and encouraging voters not to vote by mail. I believe we should label it. And I don't know who this Patrick Conlon is, but he seems to be making an awful lot of decisions about censorship here at Twitter. I'd not bother labeling with labeling this one. It's still encouraging people to vote, but expresses the concern that mailed ballots might not make it on time, which seems fair close to this election date. Still encouraging to people to turn in ballots in person or vote in person, which is good, except that, okay. So on December 10th, as Trump is in the middle of firing off 25 tweets saying things like a coup is taking place in front of our eyes, Twitter executives announced, like literally in the middle of his tweet storm, a new L3 de-amplification tool. This step meant a warning label now could also come with de-amplification. And here again is our friend Patrick Conlon. Hello, everyone. I wanted to give you an update to some of our enforcement options for tweets containing the civic misinfo that we've seen. It's been decided that tweets that we've manually reviewed and determined need a label will now be subject to L3 de-amplification, further restricting the extent to which that tweet can be shared. The current batch of entity IDs will soon be used for automated labeling work, but I've created a new batch of entity IDs for the labels that we've been using the most during the past couple weeks. Labels that we've only rarely used or that have been deprecated already haven't gotten an L3 update. If there's a moment when we need the L3 version for one of those labels, please flag it to Matt Gradon or myself. To find the new L3 entity IDs, please look at this update tab and new civ blah, 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 also in some spreadsheet, right? So how do you find that out? Some executives wanted to use that new de-amplification tool to silently limit Trump's reach more right away, like within minutes, beginning with the following tweet. And this was when Jim Jordan, he tweets, Trump got 11 million more votes, according to Jim Jordan on Newsmax, and it's a segment, and they want to block this and de-amplify it. The significance is that it shows that Twitter, in 2020 at least, was deploying a vast range of visible and invisible tools to rein in Trump's engagement long before January 6th. And before the election! How is that not the biggest story here? In Twitter docs, execs frequently refer to bots, e.g., let's put a bot on that. A bot is just any automated heuristic moderation rule. It can be anything. Every time a person in Brazil uses green and blob in the same sentence, do something. I call it an if command. So they created one in this instance. It appears that moderators added a bot for a Trump claim made on Breitbart. And I'm not a big fan of Breitbart. But this is interesting because immediately the bot ends up becoming an automated tool invisibly watching both Trump and apparently Breitbart. Trump by January 6th was quickly covered in bots, which is kind of funny. There is no way to follow the frenzied exchanges among Twitter personnel from between January 6th and 8th without knowing the basis of the company's vast lexicon of acronyms and Orwellian unwords. I love that. Acronyms and Orwellian unwords. Matt's so good. To bounce an account is to put it in timeout, usually for a 12-hour review or cool-off period. I actually got one of those on my DMs about a week and a half ago.
Yep.
Interstitial, and we're all very familiar with that because our friend Fiorella gets the interstitials every day, is one of the many nouns used as a verb in Twitter speak. Deny list is another, which means placing a physical label atop a tweet so it can't be seen. PII has multiple meanings, one being public interest interstitial, i.e., a covering label applied for public interest reasons. Post below also references proactive V or proactive visibility filtering, meaning they're throwing the kitchen sink at this stuff. And they still can't stop it. And can you imagine how far it would have gone, how much more viral, how many more people, how much more effective it could have been had they not thrown blocks on it? And yeah, they're not, again, but we're supposed to have a free and equal country, right? Where everyone has the equality of opportunity and the equality of reach and the equality of message. This is all necessary background of January
Supposedly.
6th. Right. Before the riots, company was engaged in an inherently insane and impossible to project, trying to create an ever-expanding, ostensibly rational set of rules to regulate every conceivable speech situation that might arise between humans. That sounds like a totally normal thing to do. The project was preposterous, yet its leaders were unable to see this, having become infected with groupthink, coming to believe sincerely, holy shit, that it was Twitter's responsibility to control as much as possible what people could talk about, how often, and with whom. That's the tweet that drove me insane right there. When panic first breaks about January 6th, there's a fair share of what the fuck type posts mixed in with frantic calls for Twitter to start deploying its full arsenal of moderation tools. What's the right remediation? Do we interstitial the video? Asked one employee. This theme of policy, perhaps being stressed by queries from communications executives who themselves have to answer the public questions, occasionally appears. 2 days later, you see chatter about pulling comms out of the loop. First company-wide email from Gaddy on January 6th announced that 3 Trump tweets had been bounced, but more importantly signaled a determination to use legit violations as a guide for any possible permanent suspension. Here's the email from Vijaya. Hi team, an update on actions we're taking as a result of what's happening in DC today. We have removed 3 tweets from @RealDonaldTrump on January 6th for making unfounded claims of voter fraud and election theft, which must be viewed in the context of violence in Washington, D.C. today, and reasonably can be expected to continue to incite and inspire violent acts around the country. We're requiring a 12-hour timeout following the removal of these tweets. We also have tweeted so there's transparency in our actions and making it clear that future violations of the Twitter rules will result in permanent suspension. Imagine if they had done this to Pedro Castillo. Imagine if they had done this to Lula. Imagine if they had done this to Boris Johnson. Here's what happened. Safe to say Trump's go home with love and in peace tweet mid-riot didn't go over very well at Twitter headquarters. And there's our friend Patrick Conlon. What the actual fuck? I'm labeling this now? What are you labeling it? Sorry, I got emotionally angry seeing that. Turns out I'm not a full robot. Who knew? It's gut-wrenching. He's a horrible human being. So again, we're getting his personal bias now on full display.
Mm-hmm.
In the most critical moments. The last few notes about January 6th. Roth at one point looked and found Trump had a slew of duplicate bot applications. They were making sure, like I said, throwing every possible filter that they could at every Trump tweet and every Trump everything to make sure that he was not tagged, that you couldn't tag him in stuff that, man, that campaign's got all kinds of cases that they can make that this, how do you determine exactly what the influence was here? So by the end of the first day, top execs are still trying to apply rules. By the next day, they'll contemplate a major change in approach. Watch this weekend for the play-by-play of how all that went down. And then we'll cover that next week. Maybe. I don't know. I'm going to look through it and see if it really makes sense to really go through the day-to-day. We all know what happened. I want to establish the corporate policy, and I'm going to talk. I have a recap and I have a summary of what are we pulling out of all this. By January 8th, which we'll describe on Sunday, Twitter is going to be receiving plaudits from our partners in Washington, and the sitting U.S. president will no longer be heard on the platform. So, lastly, people on the left, right, and in between want to know what else is in the Twitter files, from suppression and shadow banning of leftists to lab leak theorists or amplification of military propaganda or conservative accounts. We know everyone has questions. And while we stumbled on tidbits here and there about topics ranging from COVID to foreign policy, the reality is the data sets are so enormous and we're still working through them. Totally understand. That was a lot, I know. And I got one more story that's kind of heavy, but also kind of uplifting and kind of wow. But before I do, I know, I gotta take a breath. Who's back on Twitter? No, yeah, I know. I saw that the Krasenstein. Oh, James Woods is back on Twitter, but I'm guessing he's not going to tweet until Trump does. Barry Weiss did not dox the libs of TikTok. That tweet was already up and doxed, and she did not publish the account. That tweet. I don't think that she doxed.
Yeah,
that
no,
person.
it was someone else they're talking about. You didn't read far enough down.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So anyway, violations, those 14 other still work at Twitter. Yep. Yeah, it was all against the right. No, that's not all against the right. And I don't. Elon's wrong because Elon doesn't have access to this yet. Like he's seeing it when we're seeing it. I mean, he's got access to all of it because he gave it to them. But did he do the searching and did he do the work? I mean, did he? No, he's not doing the research that they're doing. He's not reading through all the day-to-day stuff. He just doesn't have the time. Taylor Lorenz, right? Taylor Lorenz is the one that did that. So this came out yesterday. Twitter Files, Part 7 on January 7th, Part 4. What's happening? And I just put these two in because this is where we're going to probably pick up. But as the pressure builds, Twitter execs build the case for a permanent ban. They create justifications to ban him. They seek a change of policy for Trump alone. And they express no concern for the free speech or democracy implications of banning a president of the United States, which is pretty fucked up. So here's my conclusions. Number one, Twitter was absolutely suppressing POTUS as he was running for re-election because of their opinions, not due to anything legal. This alone is a massive problem as it sets precedent and opens the door for Trump to scream he was cheated. Through every filter they had was the phrase that jumped out at me.
Right.
Like I said, we need to see who else Twitter was suppressing, and yet all the accounts not in legal or platform violations reinstated and restored. They're bringing back pro-imperialist accounts like Krasenstein's now. Give me a fucking break. Julian Assange, Palestine, Syria, Yemen, Fort Hood. What are they blocking with regard to Fort Hood? And then the Green Party. I mean, look at all the suppression of the Green Party. There were no rules for very important tweeters. Twitter execs were making it all up as they went along. I mean, wow. And then Twitter Trust and Safety, of course, meeting weekly with the FBI, DHS, and DNI. How often were they pushing suppression of a story, filtering users? And here the government seems to be in a position to place themselves between social media companies and foreign governments, combined with Pegasus, Toku, other types of spyware on journalist devices. I mean, how is that legit? I mean, and then here's my final thing is, and I keep saying, this is still being written. We are watching a textbook being written in real time. None of us knows where it's going to go. The research is still being done. They're still digging into Slack. They're still digging into emails, and they're still learning more every hour. It's going to be months, and they're going to keep dripping and dropping this out like over months. That's how I see this happening. And that's fine.
I mean, is there any reason that they won't release them?
Well, there is
like
all kinds of
other journalists.
Journalists, yes, but there's all kinds of sensitive information in there, I'm sure, that they're trying to protect.
Sure.
Contact info and victims of sexual assault and trafficking and all kinds of things that are named in these communications that should not necessarily be made public. All right.